And hello again. We're back to When the Legends Die by Hal Borland as we continue our readings. We left off at the end of section 2 where Thomas has basically, he's no longer a student at the Indian school. He has been picked up by a man named Red Dillon. Red Dillon is a rodeo lifer. He's a scam artist, we're going to find out today. And he has made his life just basically following rodeos, trying to pick up on bets and wagers and things like that. And so Tom has decided to go with them. He realizes he has no future at the school, and so that he's going to be herding sheep his entire life. And but he has developed the skill over the years to break horses. And Red has seen him do this because remember the last reading, a couple of cowboys tried to fool Tom into riding a horse that had been broken, but then Tom broke the horse and wound up making $1.25 out of the deal, which was big money back in the 30s. And then Red swoops in and says, "Hey, I'll hire you. You come in and work with me." And then he took the money that Tom had just made off the wager and used that for a meal for the two of them. That pretty much establishes who and what Red Dillon is. As we get started with section 3, the arena, as Tom is moving into a rodeo career. Thanks or no thanks to Red Dillon. We pick up on page 87, chapter 22. Red got the permit without any trouble. It was a formality that the agent was glad to have done with in a hurry. For his records, it solved the whole problem of Thomas Black Bull. Then Tom and Red Dillon got on the horses again and rode on south, pushing to get off the reservation that evening. The sun had not set before they crossed into New Mexico, but they rode for another hour before they stopped, hobbled the horses, divided the bedroll, and made a supperless camp. The next morning they rode on, across rolling flats which were much like the land on the reservation, except there was more grass. Early afternoon, and Red said, "Now we're on my range. Another couple of hours and we'll be home. Some folks might not think it's much to look at, but it's a roof and a bed, and old Mayo keeps the pot going. I will say this," he laughed, "it doesn't stink of sheep." Mirages shimmered and vanished along ahead of them, and shimmered again on the next rise. "Grass enough here," Reg said with a sweeping gesture, "for a real layout. If I ever figured I was worth enough, I could put 1,000 head of horses out here and still have grass to spare. But if I did, I'd have to hay them in the winter. Start haying, and you've got to have help. Help eats up all the profits, so I keep my layout small so me and Mayo can handle it." A little later he said, "You'll like Mayo. He's an old chili eater. He doesn't have much to say, but he's all right. He used to be quite a writer himself, until he bronc fell on him 10 years ago, broke something in his back, and he's got a hump in his shoulders now. You ever ride in a rodeo, Tom?" "No." "You ever seen one?" "No." "Well, you will. Things go right, we may go to the show in Aztec next month. We'll go a lot of places, Tom, and we'll get paid for it. We'll make them pay," he laughed. "I've got euchred in Mancos last week, but I got to feel my luck's turned. Yes, sir, I think my luck has turned." Mid-afternoon, what looked from a distance like just another wide gully began to spread out ahead of them. It was still 2 miles away, but Tom could see the dark green of trees. They were coming to the sharp-walled canyon of the San Juan, which, picking up the water from half a dozen big creeks after past Pagosa, became the river that swept into a great arc down through the corner of New Mexico before it swung north again and plowed its way into Utah and the incredible canyons of the Colorado. Here it looped about like a silvery snake, hiding from its arid flatlands in a bluff-walled, shallow canyon of its own. They came to the rim of the bluff and looked down on huge old cottonwoods and lush grass where the river embowed itself between the canyon walls. A shelving trail led down the bluff, and as they rode down, Tom saw a weathered cabin among the trees, and an unchinked log barn and a set of old pole corrals. Beyond the cabin was a garden patch, green with rows of beans and pepper plants, and a bent man was hoeing in the garden. They rode to the barn, unsaddled, and turned the horses into the corral, and Red led the way to the cabin. The gnomish, leather-faced old Mexican with a hump in his shoulders put down his hoe and came to meet them. "This is Tom, Mayo," Red said. "We're going to teach Tom to be a bronc twister." Mayo looked at Tom, then asked Red, "You win at Marcos?" Red shook his head. "But my luck's changed. Me and Tom are going to Aztec. We're going to take their shirts." "Maybe," Mayo said, and he turned and went back to the garden. The cabin was one long room with a fireplace across the far end. In front of the fireplace was a plank table with 2 benches. Several bunks were built against one wall, and on pegs in the other wall were rawhide lariats, bridles, spare cinches, 2 pairs of sleek leather chaps, assorted riding gear. There was a pile of firewood beside the fireplace. A string of red chilies hung from a beam, and on the white ashes stood a black coffee pot and a slowly simmering iron kettle. Red tossed the bedroll in a bunk, picked up a mug and a bowl from the table, and poured coffee. "Help yourself," he said as he spooned beans and chili from the kettle. Tom got himself a bowl of chili and a cup of coffee while Red found the tortillas in the Dutch oven. They ate in silence until Red had finished his chili and beans. He filled his bowl again and sat back to let it cool. "Well, Tom, the agent asked what I see to it that you had a home and learned to trade. I don't know what he'd say about this place, but it's a roof over your head when it rains. A cut better than a sheepherder's tent, isn't it?" Tom nodded agreement and went on eating. "And if you never have less to eat," Red said, "I guess you won't starve. So you've got a home. As for a trade, you must have meant being able to turn your hand in something that would keep you out of the poorhouse. Well, I've never been in the poorhouse. I don't plan to be. You stick with me, and I guess you'll make out." His eyes went to the chaps and bridles and cinches hanging on the wall. "We'll both make out." He smiled to himself, and then saw Tom had finished his chili. "Help yourself to some more. Eat up. I got to get some gristle in your gut. You'll need it, for you're going to start learning that trade tomorrow." The next morning, Tom got his first lesson as a bronc rider. Besides the 2 saddle horses, Red had 9 others, all buckers. "Anyone's got an outlaw he'll sell for $5, I take him. You get so you can ride my rough string. You can ride any horse you like. You'll likely draw in a rodeo. The kind that shows where we work anyway." So they brought in the rough string, roped one horse, blindfolded it, cinched on the bronc saddle. Red handed Tom a pair of slick leather chaps that he had soaked in the horse trough and told him to put it on. Then he led the saddled horse from the corral out onto the open grass. Mayo twisted its ears and held its head while Tom mounted, adjusted the reins in his left hand, and settled himself into the saddle. Mayo turned the horse loose, and Tom rode only 4 jumps before he was thrown. Red caught the horse and said, "Too much rein, try again." And Tom mounted once more. He rode a few jumps longer that time, but was thrown again. "Not enough rein," Red announced. "Now do it right this time." And Tom got the saddle again, bruised and angry. But then the horse was tiring, and Tom had begun to know its rhythm. He was loosened in the saddle twice, but the wet chaps clung to the saddle. He recovered both times. He rode the horse to a standstill. "That's better," Red said grudgingly, while Mayo brought a fresh horse from the corral. Tom caught his breath while they saddled it. Then he rode again and was thrown again. He was thrown 5 times that first day, but he began to learn how to fall as well as how to ride. The second day, the lessons he had learned riding the agency ponies began to come back. He found a sense of timing and rhythm, began to gauge a horse in its first few jumps. These horses were bigger and stronger than the Indian ponies, and each had his own pattern of bucking. He learned the patterns and learned to anticipate the horse's next move, be set for it. By the end of the week, he had ridden 2 horses in succession to a standstill. Then they moved into the corral and began riding out of the chute. They built a chute in the corral like a rodeo regis chute, a plank pen with walls just wide enough apart to take a horse with gates at each end, and crowded a horse so it could neither lunge nor buck. There was a narrow runway on each side where he stood to saddle the horse and from where he mounted. The first horse Tom rode out of the chute was a big roan as mean as a tomcat with its tail on fire. It made such a fuss that Mayo had not only to ear its head down, but bite the tip of one while Red saddled it. Then Tom straddled the chute, let himself down easily into the saddle, got set, and Mayo opened the gate. The horse lunged out, bucking, side-jumping, fighting like a fiend. Tom, riding in dry chaps, felt the reins slip in his sweaty hands, tried to recover the slack, lost the stirrup, and went head over heels. As he slowly picked himself up from the hard-packed corral, Red shouted, "Come on back and ride him right this time." He caught the roan and put him in the chute again. Tom recovered his breath, dried his hands on his shirt, got back into the saddle again, adjusted the rein, and Mayo opened the gate. The roan went out bucking just as viciously as before, but Tom rode him, for ages it seemed. Twice he was loose in the saddle, and each time he recovered. Once he had to grab the saddle with his free right hand as he heard Red yell something, but he wasn't listening. The roan fought the rein. It reared and came down with a jolt that made Tom's teeth hurt, but he rode it until he was gasping for breath, until it slowed to a crow hop. Then it stopped, and he eased out of the saddle. His legs were quivering. His belly was drummed tight. His head was ringing. But he led it back to the chute. "You pulled leather," Red accused. I rode him. You didn't ride him clean. I rode him. Then Tom knew he was going to be sick. He started for the corral fence, but he couldn't make it before he threw up. Then he went to the fence and leaned on it till his head began to clear. Come on, Red ordered. You're done with your puking. Now you're going to ride like I tell you to. He had a fresh horse in the chute. 2 more weeks, and Tom had ridden every horse in Red's rough string to a standstill. He ached from head to foot every night, but he had learned to ride. Red admitted he was doing pretty well. We're almost ready for Aztec, he said, but there's still a thing or two you've got to learn. What? Tom asked. I'll show you maybe tomorrow. The next morning they got a gray mare in the chute. She was a ducker and a dodger. Give her 2 inches of slack and she would jump right from under you. But Tom knew her tricks. He was bucking in the shafts when Red asked, How's that saddle suit you? Cinches tight enough? He didn't usually ask. Tom shook the saddle, seemed right. Front cinches tight, back cinches just snug enough to keep the saddle from rocking. It'll do, he said, and straddled the chute, let himself down and found the stirrups. He took the rein, threaded it between his fingers, adjusted it for length. He braced his stirrups, set his spurs to the base of the horse's neck. You sure you're all right? Red asked. Tom looked at him, thought he saw a trace of a smile. I'm ready, he said, and Mayo swung the gate open. The gray lunged out. She bucked twice and started her ducking and dodging. Tom set the reins taut, rode without trouble for several seconds. Then she side jumped, and he felt something give under him. The saddle began to turn. He saw a loose cinch dangling and kicked free of the stirrups just in time to be thrown clear. He landed hard, and he slowly got up, and he saw Red laughing. Red didn't catch the mare as he usually did. Tom caught her, led her back to the saddle where she had kicked free. He looked at the saddle and saw that both latigos, the straps that held the cinches, were broken. Both were old latigos instead of the good new ones that had been on the saddle the day before, and both had been cut halfway through with a knife. Tom picked up the saddle, carried it back to the chute, and dropped it in the ground in front of Red. You did that, he said. Sure I did, Red said, still laughing. Tom was 2 inches shorter and 30 pounds lighter than Red Dillon, but he lunged at him with both fists. Red dodged back and hit him with one quick blow, knocking him down. Tom got to his knees, but Red pushed his shoulder and held him down. Stay down there and cool off. I've been in a lot more brawls than you have. I'll knock you down as fast as you get up. Tom crouched there, furious. You cut those latigos. Or latigos. I'm always bad with that. Latigos. I said I did. I told you yesterday. Still to learn a thing or two. First one, don't trust anybody when it comes to your saddle and your gear. Not even me. Check everything yourself before you say you're ready. I asked you twice if you were all set. You didn't even look at the cinches or latigos. Tom slowly got to his feet, still glowering. Second thing you just learned, Red said, is not to jump somebody bigger than you unless you've got an evener. Knucks or a club or a gun. And when you get mad like that, don't try to take it out on me. Take it out on a horse where you've got a chance to win. He turned and walked away. Tom watched him go, caught the gray mare, tied a rope around her for a surgical, and mounted her and rode her to a standstill as he had rode the ponies on the reservation. When she finally came to a stop, snorting bloody foam, he got off and went to the house. Red was at the table drinking coffee. Did you get it out of your system? He asked. I rode her, Tom said. Sure, I knew you could. Red stirred his coffee and watched him for a moment. You can ride the horses. They'll have an Aztec too. But you're going to lose. Just the same. No, I'm not. Well, I say you are. Why? Because I said so. You're just another Indian kid that thinks he can ride. That's what they'll think, and that's what I'll tell them. So you'll enter the bronc riding, you'll draw good horses, you'll score high, might even win the number 2 go-round. But you'll lose the final, you understand? No. You damn well better understand, because that's what you're going to do. You'll lose the final go-round, and after that you'll ride again. No matter how come, you ride again, you'll ride that horse right into the ground. But don't butt me. I say that's what you're going to do. You didn't think I wanted you to make a goddamn hero out of you, did you? Not with that Aztec bunch just faunching to bet. And I'm setting up the deadfall, and you're riding the way I tell you to. Now do you understand? Tom hesitated. Red rubbed his knuckles. You got one beauty of a shiner. You ain't getting another one like it. But you sure as hell will if you get stubborn. You're going to do as I say, aren't you? And Tom nodded. Yes, he said. Now we're going to get a part of chapter 23. Aztec, as Red put it, was just a wide place in the road, but its rodeo drew ranch folk from the whole area. People eager after a long, hot summer to meet old friends and roister a bit and have fun. The contestants were mostly ranch hands who had learned to ride and rope on the range and on Sunday afternoons show off in some ranch corral. The spectators came to see an exciting show, to bet on friends and neighbors, and to cheer any special event that might be offered. The purses were small, but betting was free-handed. Red Dillon had ridden to Aztec the year before and knew enough local people to rouse mild interest by saying he wasn't a contestant this time around. I just came to see the show, he said. Then he added, and to see if this boy here can ride. He thinks he can, and I guess this is as good a time as any to find out. His listeners looked at Tom, who was just another Indian boy in faded Levi's and a work shirt and scuff boots, and his hair looked as though it had been cut with dull sheep shears. Several men grinned and asked Red if he'd like to lay a few bets on the kid, and Red laughed. I said he thinks he can ride. Let's wait for the first go-round to see if he's good or just lucky. It was a 2-day show with a parade that first morning, a barbecue at noon, then the first go-round in rodeo parlance, and all the events that afternoon. The second day there would be 2 programs, the semifinal in the morning, the final go-round in the afternoon. The arena was the local baseball field where pens and chutes had been built and bright new planks in the infield, and crowds had been thrown up in the outfield for the bucking horses, the wild steers, and the calves. Like most small rodeos, the program consisted of calf roping, steer riding, bareback bronc riding, and saddle bronc riding, with a wild horse race and wild cow milking contest thrown in for laughs. Bigger rodeos added steer wrestling to the programs and brightened it up with pretty girls doing trick riding, and big circuit rodeos, especially when playing in major cities, were beginning at horse show events for glitter and for style. The Little Aztec's minor show was built around the heart and core of rodeo, men riding unbroken broncs and men roping untamed calves. And the classic event was the historic reason for rodeo itself, the saddle bronc riding. Fundamentally, it was man against horse, cowboy trying to master an unbroken bronco. It was the same thing Tom had done when he rode a drunken cowboy's fractious horse in the dusty streets of Bayfield just to win $1. But here he would ride out of a chute, just as he had at Red's place on the San Juan, and he would ride according to standard rodeo rules. He must hold the reins in one hand, not touch saddle or horse with the other hand, must rake with the spurs, keep his feet moving, and he must ride 10 seconds. Then a horn would blow, a mounted pickup man would come alongside, take the reins from the rider, and let the rider pivot off the saddle, off the bucking bronc, and swing on down to the ground. The ride was scored on points based on skill in the saddle, and the worse the horse, the more difficult the ride, the higher the successful rider's score. If a rider was thrown or committed a foul, he lost the go-round. If the horse refused to buck, the rider got another chance in the same horse, or if he chose a different horse. In bigger rodeos, all the riders rode in all 3 go-rounds. Their points were totaled and prizes were awarded at each man's totals. But at Aztec, as in most small rodeos, each go-round was an elimination contest, leaving only the top 5 riders for the finals. As Red put it, this was a sudden death show. You had to place well in every go-round to stay in competition. So start riding out rough and tough, he told Tom. Take the first 2 go-rounds. The first day, Tom drew a snaky, wide-winding black that hooked in a tight circle. Tom had no special trouble with him and was surprised with the 10-second horn blew. The picket man rode alongside. Tom handed him the rein, grabbed his shoulder, and swung off the saddle as Red had taught him. He was almost back to the chute before he realized that the crowd was applauding him. Red said he had made a good ride when the score was announced. Tom placed second. That evening, there was a good deal of talk about this new kid, this Indian, who didn't look more than 12 or 13, but rode like a man. Red had put down a few small bets on him at the last minute and made a few more bets on him for the second go-round. But when pressed to bet the finals, Red shook his head. Let's take it round by round. Tom's luck may run out tomorrow. To Tom, he said, now they've weeded out the Sunday riders. Tomorrow morning, you'll just have to ride the good ones, the lucky ones to beat. Give 'em hell. Ride your draw hide, wide and handsome. And that's what Tom did. He drew a big roan that tried to tear down the chute while they were saddling him. When the gates swung open, the roan went out with a series of spectacular lunges and brought an instant roar from the crowd. They recognized Tom. They knew a vicious bucker when they saw one. After 2 jumps, Tom knew he could ride the roan, so he raked and gouged with his spurs. The roan bellowed and fought, and Tom punished him every legal way he knew. He rode all out, When the horn blew, the crowd was in an uproar. They cheered him all the way back to the chutes. Red praised him extravagantly. When Tom was announced as winner of the round, Red collected his bets. He offered to bet on the finals, jeered at those who refused to wager, but kept his bets small. When the morning program was over, they went to eat dinner. Red had several drinks and began to talk as though he had had one too many. The betting crowd listened as he bragged and winked at each other. A few of them placed bets with him on the finals, but again, Red kept the bets low. And when he and Tom started back to the rodeo grounds, Red sobered up the minute they were alone, so the drinking was all an act. He's very sober. He's setting up the bets. "Well, Tom," he said, "you've been a hero. You like it?" "Yes," Tom said. "I thought so. Well, that's all over now. You're going to be a bum in the finals. You're going to lose and lose big." No, I'm not. I can. Shut up. I said you're going to lose the finals. I'm giving the orders. I've got the deadfall all set up. You're going to lose the final, and they're going to think they've got me on the hip. Then I'll really take them. In the finals, you're going to give your horse slack in the reins at the first jump and look for a soft place to land. You hear me?" "I hear," Tom said reluctantly. "You'll do as I say, or I'll break your goddamn neck. You get thrown. Then after the final go-round is over, you're going to ride again. Be a special event. Then you better be the hero. You start running. Now, do you understand?" "I guess so." "You know so. You damn well know so." Then they were back in the arena, and Red acted the part of the drunken braggart again. So that leaves us off at page 96. We'll continue then with chapter 23 of When the Legends Die. As for now, take care.